Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. So, listen, there are some really common thoughts about starting a podcast that many people have, and they might actually sound like they're true, but they're really lies in disguise. Welcome to Empowered Endeavors, the podcast where we transform burned out professionals into purpose driven powerhouses. Listen, this is the show where business strategy and passion come together to create real, lasting impact. I am Shaunna Lee, speaker, strategist, and host of this space where real stories meet real growth. Each week, we dive into the truth behind the pivot, the podcast, or the plot twist, and we help you create the next chapter you actually want to live. So if you've reached success, but you still feel something calling you deeper, welcome home, my friends. Now, listen, today's episode dismantles the real reasons people keep putting off starting their podcast. And it is not lack of time or tech, but it is these hidden beliefs that we think are true, like no one's going to listen anyways, I'm not quite ready, or it's all been said before, or my all-time favorite, I don't have the time. Maybe one day I will address this podcast situation when I have more time. That is the most common objection I hear from people. And so let's spend the next few minutes talking together to reframe these beliefs and give you the permission you need to take action today. Because here's the thing. I am here to tell you that the process to start your podcast can actually be simple. It can feel very aligned, and it can happen fast. So there are 5 different beliefs that we are going to dive into today. The first one is no one will listen. And here's what I'm going to tell you. You don't actually need a massive audience. You need the right listeners. You need the people who are going to connect and resonate with you, because the way you are saying something is going to land different for them than the other people that they've heard say the same thing. Here's the thing. You can use your voice to build trust and to deepen that connection with your audience. And it allows you to create the community that is so very needed in this world. Now, on some of my most recent interview episodes, there has been a theme that's coming out with my guests who have been podcasting, and that is this unexpected benefit that comes from podcasting. None of us set out to build new relationships or deepen those connections, but that's what happens through podcasting. It is building a deeper connection with people. And here's one of the things that I have chatted about quite often on this podcast, and that is around depression and anxiety and feeling burnt out, all of these different symptoms that come from us feeling disconnected in our lives. The solution is not to become a happier person. The solution is not to find fulfillment in some new fun way. Listen, these are great catalysts for that, but the solution is connection. The way we get to being more fulfilled and happier as human beings is through connection. The way we crawl our way out of depression is through connection. Podcasting is an amazing way to build connection with your fellow human beings. And I'm going to tell you that people will listen to what you have to say because your story is powerful. And the amount of healing and power that comes from someone sharing their story never ceases to amaze me. Can hear your resilience and your strength that comes from sharing your story. It comes from being vulnerable and opening up and using our voice, that it allows us to build those deeper connections. And this idea that no one will listen to what I have to say. Let's say your podcast idea is something really, really niche specific. And you're like, gosh, how many people out there really want to hear this thing that I have to talk about? I'm going to give you a great example. There is a podcast called Ologies, and it is hosted by Alice Ward. She literally has an entire podcast devoted to different specialty interests. For example, one of her episodes is called Canistromology. First of all, I had to listen to the episode to even know what that was. It is basket weaving. There is an entire episode on her show about basket weaving. And I just think this is the best example to show you that if Alice can be out here talking about all these specialties, and she has created a podcast that is devoting an entire episode to basket weaving, you can do the podcast on whatever the topic is that you have mulling around in your brain. So belief number one, we have debunked that no one will listen, because listen, if there's people out there listening to an episode on basket weaving, they'll listen to your podcast. Okay, so let's dive into belief number two. It's all been said before. Okay, on the surface, that feels like it might be valid. And if you were to go out and look at podcasts in the business category, or on, let's say, a subcategory of business like marketing, you will find no limit to the number of podcasts that are devoted to this category, to all of the various topics within this category. But here is what is important to remember. Your lived experience is different than anyone else's. And the way that you will express your thoughts about the same subject will be different, and it will come through your voice. And someone out there needs to hear it the way you're going to say it. They need to hear it coming from you, because it's going to land for them perfectly because you have said it the way that you will say it. So your lived experience, your personal experience is really important to talking about even a topic that everyone has already talked about. And here's another thing to keep in mind. So we know that new podcasts are being born every day, and you can see so many different podcasts on any given topic or within any given category. If you dig just a little bit deeper, what you will notice is that there's not a whole lot of those podcasts that keep going. So one of the things I teach in Pod Launch is how to set yourself up for success so that you can consistently show up and provide new content. The reason I do that is because there are so many podcasts that never make it to episode 10. Far fewer ever make it to episode 20, and next to none of them make it past episode 100. So there are lots and lots of podcasts out there that you might see in a category, but how many of them have actually made it to double-digit numbers? So take it with a grain of salt when you see a whole bunch of podcasts in any one category. And yes, they're being born every day, but so many of them don't last, which is why I help you get yours to the point where it will last and it is consistent, and you are creating some momentum as you create episodes. So for example, if you are to go out to Apple Podcasts and you search for the word author, you are going to find many, many episodes, many podcasts and shows devoted to all sorts of versions of being an author, whether you are an aspiring author, whether you are an existing author. You've got podcasts devoted just to having people come on and talk about their book. You have lots and lots of podcasts devoted to the idea of writing and coaching people how to write their book. You've got even more podcasts devoted to publishing books. And so you've written your book, and how do you publish it? And their entire show is devoted to just that piece of the puzzle. You've got podcasts devoted to writer's block and fiction books versus nonfiction books. You've got podcasts devoted to creativity hacks. There are so many different nuances in ways that you can talk about writing and becoming an author or being an author, that even though it's been said before, you will say it a different way. And the way you are going to say it using your voice is valuable. Okay, so belief number 3. This one's my favorite. I'm not tech savvy enough. This actually reminds me of a couple different things. So I didn't have this example ready for you guys, but it's coming to mind now. So I'm going to share it. And I have always thought of myself as pretty tech savvy until I was until I was parenting these children. The speed at which these young people today can pick up a device and learn new technology, it makes the tech savvy me feel like I don't know technology. And it always reminds me when I have these moments of, oh gosh, how did you do that so quick? I had little kids show me in the classroom how to dual share we needed to see the spreadsheet of car rider pickup, and they wanted to see YouTube video at the same time. And they showed me how to share that in side by side screen sharing. I didn't know how to do this. These kids figure it out really quick, and it makes the tech savvy me feel as if I'm not tech savvy. Here's the funny part. It reminds me of that meme that says, don't make fun of me for teaching me technology because I taught you how to use a spoon, because I taught my children how to use a spoon, and how easy is that? But anyways, I think that's hilarious. And every time I have a moment of feeling like I'm not tech savvy, that's what I think of. However, for those of you who are listening and you think, I don't know technology, I can barely use a computer, here's what I'm going to tell you. Podcasting tools today are so much easier than they've ever been. So the different AI options that we have, the different applications and software that we have is making it even more intuitive than it's ever been before. So editing a podcast now is super, super simple. Whereas back in the day, if you were editing just audio, you had to go in to learn tracks, and it was very complicated. This is how I learned to podcast. And I'm going to tell you that using Riverside has made it so much easier. So just by using one application, which acts a lot like Zoom. So if you've ever joined a Zoom video, you can have a podcast. It is incorporating a lot of different AI variations, as well as all of the other AI creations that are out there. It makes writing captions easier. It makes editing clips easier. If you use Canva, that makes creating digital content so simple and easy. There are tools today that did not exist 2 years ago, even a year ago, that make podcasting very simple, super easy to learn. And that is exactly what I teach you in Pod Launch. I simplify each of those steps, and I tell you the easiest software to use. I give you the very basic equipment that is needed, because here's what you will find to be true. You are going to learn more in the doing of your podcast, in the recording and editing and sharing of your own show, than I could ever teach you in the planning phase. So the whole purpose of Pod Launch is to get you over the finish line with a launched podcast as soon as possible. It is not because there is some magic number of 30 days or 4 weeks is the critical make or break moment. It is simply because we need to get you to the point where you have a published podcast as soon as possible, because that is where the magic happens. Getting you to the point where you have a show that you can start talking about, that you can learn. Listen, imperfect action is where it's at. People don't need perfect sound. They don't need beautiful backgrounds, professional studios. They need to hear what you have to say. They need your guidance. They need your knowledge. They need your wisdom. And they won't get it unless you step up to the mic and start talking. And all of the other technology can be simplified. And I do that for you in Pod Launch, is to simplify what is needed and what is required to get you over the finish line ASAP. Okay, so here's my next most favorite false belief, and that is, I don't have the time. This is the number one objection I hear when I tell people about my program, and they're like, yeah, I've totally thought about starting a podcast. It's just not on the top of my list right now. It's just not on my priorities at the moment. I don't have the time. I'm waiting for the time to open up. And here's what I'm going to tell you. You never have the time. We always have the same number of hours in a day today that we did yesterday that we will tomorrow. What are you choosing to spend your time on? Are you choosing downtime, watching Netflix? Like, I'm sure you can tell me the latest episode on Netflix of whatever series you're watching. And I'm going to tell you, in the amount of time it takes you to watch one episode, you could record 2 episodes of your podcast. So that's not to say you quit watching TV and you don't have a life. I'm just saying it's where you spend your time. And if podcasting is an important priority to you, you make the time for it. However, in my pod launch program, I also give you different ideas and tactics around how you can batch record, and you can podcast in seasons. Just because you decide to start a podcast does not mean that you are committing to every single week, every single month showing up with content. You get to decide. You get to make up the rules and decide if you are going to take a long break. Listen, I take a break from recording all summer long so I can spend time with my kids. This was one of the reasons I wanted to, for a long time, be a teacher, and for even longer, not be in corporate. And that was because I wanted to spend the summers with my kids. I wanted us to be able to go to the pool in the middle of the day and not have to wait till the evening or the weekends. Podcasting lets me do that because I can schedule my recordings around my schedule. And what I do is take a long break during the summer, and I will batch record to build up content. So then I'm just releasing it steadily through the summer. There are ways that podcasting can work for you in the time that you have. The other idea I love to share with people is around mini series. So being able to pick a new theme or series of content allows you to hyper focus in on one category, batch record, get all of your interviews in a line, and then move on to another series. Take a long pause in between. It is up to you. There, again, are no rules. I love the idea of batch recording once a month. So one of my podcasting clients was having a challenge showing up and being consistent week after week. And so what we talked about was being able to sit down and record multiple episodes once or twice a month felt much easier and doable for her. And so she can then batch record multiple episodes and not have to worry about recording a new episode every single week. So one of the things that I teach my clients is to look at your life and where you have pockets of time. If it is not consistent, if you don't week after week have the same schedule, batch recording will be your friend. Okay, so belief number 5, my last one that we will debunk, and that is, I'm not ready. How many times have I heard someone say, I'm just not ready? I'm just not ready. It reminds me of how many people have said, oh, I'm not ready to be a parent. And I'm going to tell you, you're never ready. You're never ready to be a parent. You don't know what's about to hit you until it does. But there is something about the clarity that comes from taking action. So a lot of people say, I'm not ready because it's too uncertain and it feels murky, and they just need it to feel more clear before they're ready to take action. And what I'm going to tell you is sometimes taking action is exactly what brings that clarity. So it's when you sit down to, for example, draft out the content for your first 10 episodes. This is one of the worksheets I provide in Pod Launch to walk you through this process. But when you sit down to think about what am I going to talk about for how long on 10 different episodes, that's when you start to get real crystal clear about who your audience is and what the name of your podcast might need to be, or how often you might be able to talk about that topic. There is clarity that comes from the fact that you took action and you sat down to actually plan out episodes. And there's no commitment there. There's no commitment in saying, gosh, what would I talk about in 3 to 6 episodes? Or what could I possibly talk about for 20 episodes? You pick the number, but once you start highlighting that and figuring out how much you can and can't say on any given topic in that amount of time, you'll realize you have way more episodes already in your mind than you thought you did. And again, this is my favorite thing to point out, which is you learn more in the doing. So I can tell you all the live long day what makes a good recording and all the tips and tricks to recording good audio. But until you sit down to record yourself speaking into a microphone and then go to edit it, you will not know what is important to you. I can tell you, I don't like to hear certain things. I'm trying to think of an example. I don't really like to hear dogs barking in the background, but it may not bother some people. It likely will bother most people. That's probably not the best example, but what I'm going to tell you is you will not know what resonates with you, what clicks, what you notice until you start recording and listening to those episodes. So it's the doing where you learn what's important to you. And the reason I use the analogy of pod launch being me pushing the birds out of the nest, learning to fly, is because sometimes you just have to jump off the cliff and find your wings on the way down. There's something about just saying, okay, I'm launching, I'm doing it. Here's my podcast, that then you figure out how to edit, how to make it easier, when you can record. It's when you jump off and say, okay, I'm doing this damn thing, that you will figure out what your rhythm looks like. You will figure out what your cadence is. And I think the last thought I have on all of these lies disguised as beliefs is that most people just wait too damn long thinking about a podcast before they say, okay, fine, I'm going to do it. Okay, I'm going to devote a couple hours a week. I'm going to pick 2 different days to use my lunch break and I'm going to do it. I'm going to listen. I'm going to learn. I'm going to take some action. That is what Pod Launch does, is take it into bite-sized pieces for you to break it down into manageable activities. And the reason that I break it into 4 weeks is because it's palatable. It's bite-sized pieces. It's not a 3-month commitment. This is 1 month where you decide, I'm going to learn something new. And in 1 month, you will decide if it's for you or not. You will decide likely how much you love podcasting once you start recording and talking to people, but you will not know until you start. So I would love, love, love to have you all join me in Pod Launch so that you can learn for yourself that yes, people are going to listen to you. No, it has not all been said before. You don't have to be tech savvy. You do have the time and you are ready. So if this episode today did its job and you're excited to learn more, join me in Pod Launch. It's at shaunalee.com/pod launch. Let's launch your podcast this summer, my friends. And I guess until next week, I just want to say thank you again for listening to Empowered Endeavors. This is where story meets strategy and your voice becomes your greatest asset. I cannot wait to help you start your podcast. Until next time, my friends.